Yeah, one funny thing about this item here, so let's try this out. This is Shard of Erathiel, the new basic attack weapon. So every basic attack will use this. Funny enough, they made some new unique items, for example for the Sork, that has a basic attack build that is way weaker than whatever this could do. But that's on the side. So a lot of people were saying, oh no, Bash is getting nerfed. That tempers went down from 105 to 20%. So that's a huge nerf, you think. But we have this. And it looks kind of funny actually how this works. So it says here Fury cost and then generate Fury. So you get both at the same time if you look at this. Here it says generate Fury 15 on the tooltip. And now it adds the Fury cost as well, 21%. And then, I mean, you generate Fury, but you also spend it at the same time. It looks like this. So you actually still have a net gain here, for example. And you could invest into a little bit of regeneration, for example. If you need to. I have Endless Fury, so this is 36% more Fury. This has actually been buffed now, it just gives more. And it works for, I think this was only two-handed weapons before, now it works for one-handed as well if you want. But I guess Bash would probably run two-handed. There's different setups, you can run dual wield. So that's pretty good. In fact, I think Bash will be buffed. So if it's a little bit of Mafia, life value 105 Bash temper, season 5 value is 20. The loss is 81%, the new base damage is 19%. And now if you go through this a little bit, we add the shards, we get -1 bash temper, which is -1/6 of our damage. Because you usually have 2 doubles, it's 4 basically, and then 2 singles. So that's 6 tempers, you get -1. Then we lose an aspect, like a typical, let's say 20% aspect Edge Masters. So our new base is 13% of the original. Now this sword has very good stats actually. It has better stats than what a normal weapon can do. This is maybe debatable for like a Gushing Wound setup, but let's assume like a pure bash cleave setup, right? The crit bash cleave basically. The stats on this thing are really good. Lots of attack speed, you get basic skill ranks, even losing the tempers and stuff, like is a net gain I think, of not even that little. And then you get 300% damage with a perfect roll on the effect. So just with that sword, we are at roughly a third of our damage lost from season 4 to season 5. We have 63% of our original damage. And now we can add some other synergies. Stardust Skies, -1 aspect, so we lose, let's say, 28% again. I'm not sure which one you would drop here right now, let's say something like Rapid or so. So the typical aspect is around that value. So we are at this value, we gain 50% from Stardust. So now we are back at 80% of our original damage. And Stardust Skies has kind of crappy stats, so we lose a little bit again, so you're at 70. So I gave it like a -5% and -8% here. For like, for example, no attack speed and no strength or something. So this is kind of where we at here with Stardust. Then we add Crown of Lucion. Now that's an interesting one. That's a new one, a crazy helm. Says that whenever you spend resources, which you can now do with Bash, you gain 25% increased damage, but you also gain 25% increased resource costs, but it starts at -75% resource cost reduction. So this item will probably be included into almost every single build in a game in the future. This seems way stronger than Shaco for most builds. However, it has a downside, it is way less defensive than Shaco, and doesn't give you like skill ranks to utility skills. So there are some kind of like downsides here that are relatively easy to overcome for Barbs because they're tanky and basically immortal, even without a Shaco. So this is something to consider, but it's 125% damage bonus once it's stacked. So let's do that. And boom, we are at 157% of our original damage compared to season 4. We lose the Shaco, skill ranks. So I assumed we have 20 ranks in Bash, which is pretty optimistic. This means like perfect gear, +8 on the pants. We lose 4 ranks. That's a bit of a loss here. So we are at a net gain of 36% compared to live server. If you play Bash, when you have Crown of Lucion, Stardust, and Shard of Erathiel. Now there's like some other little things that we didn't consider here in this calculation. Number 1, Stardust Skies makes it way easier to cap resistances because it has all res as a second stat. Stardust Skies is very nice for that purpose. If you look at this one here, it has double all res. Usually Barbs go for like 1 or 2 all res rolls on a gear, so this kind of saves you from one of them. That's very nice. What you also didn't consider is the defensive loss. You will be squishier. Like no Shaco has -20% DR. Has less life as well, the Crown of Lucion. So I guess you can expect something like of a damage reduction loss of like a third or so. You're gonna feel that. And you might have to make up for that with like a life roll here and maybe, you know, an extra defensive slot here or something like that. But even if you, let's say, convert, let's, I don't know, 15% of your damage to extra life, let's say, or something like that, you are still ahead compared to live server. And lastly, we have to stack these effects, right? You have to get to 5 stacks for both the ring and the crown. So when you have no stacks, you are at 40% of the original damage compared to season 4. And then at 1, it's like half. At 2 stacks, it's like 60%, and then it's 75 at 3 stacks. And it's the same, almost exactly the same, when you have 4 stacks. So in a fight that just begins and is very short, you will actually feel the impact of not having those two effects stacked. Attacking an enemy with 0 stacks versus attacking it with full stacks means you do like not even a third of your damage. So you need to stack both these effects up. You're gonna notice that, like, you know, bash by bash by bash, you do a lot more damage until you have 5 stacks on for both. Star Disguise lasts 3 seconds, Crown of Lucion lasts 4 seconds, so that's a bit more forgiving. But ultimately, you want to try to make sure to do 1 bash at something every 3 seconds roughly, which is doable. If you have like kept movement speed, you run through the pit, most of the time you will find enemies in 3 seconds. And just like swing at something, you know, while you're running, you can actually like run towards them and swing at them and these kind of things as well if you click on them. So that's kind of something. But yeah, bash nerfed? I don't actually think so, guys. This looks really good. Now, one thing to consider here is that bash technically did get nerfed compared to other builds. And a lot of other builds also will use Shard of Erathiel. And there will be a lot of other basic attack builds in the game that will suddenly become a lot more powerful because they didn't receive this bash nerf. So Flay is an example, right? Flay currently is probably the strongest build in the game in Season 4, and that can also use Shard of Erathiel and the same combo that I just described, and just gain a benefit. Now there are like some slight tweaks here, because Flay Duration is now on utility tempers, and it's not on weapon tempers anymore. So you will not necessarily get the same number of it, but not a huge loss compared to what you gain here. And then there's, for example, you know, all the other classes that also will run Shard of Erathiel. Heartseeker Rogues will run this. Maybe even Stormclaw Druids or something might try to include this. Firebolt Sork will include this. Like basically everyone who runs a basic attack build will become stronger. Like noticeably more stronger than Bash Barb. But Bash Barb technically is still buffed, as long as you have those 2 new uniques and the starters, I guess, which is kind of late to come online. But yeah. And the good thing is that the resources kind of souls itself. You get like a lot of resource cost reduction from the Lucion crown. You get a lot of resource cost reduction from the starters, and you generate resources just from bashing. So I didn't do the resource calculation now, but it should be fairly easy to sustain the resources, because starters kind of directly counteracts the downside of the Lucion crown. Like they both stack up to 5, and as you stack up one, you gain resource cost, and the other one gives you resource cost reduction. It's gonna be very easy to sustain this.